Hey guys, it's your boy CJ Drum, back with another Marvel Spider-Man PlayStation 4 video. Today we're going to do part 2 of Will Marvel's Spider-Man live up to the hype? In the first video we covered activities, side quests, and the main story. In this video we're going to cover enemy types and combat. So with that being said, let's jump right into it.
So right off the bat, we're going to do a little bit about combat. We're not going to spend too much time here, but we know Insomniac is going to have a skill tree in this game, which means Spider-Man is going to be able to unlock new moves and move sets and variations of attacks. That's pretty much enough said. I'm excited for that. I think that not using combos but giving players different move abilities is a great compromise. I mean, games from when I first started playing games, probably 20 years ago, they did focus mostly on combos. So learning and memorizing different combos, and those combos being what varied gameplay. But now games have really moved away from that, and instead of doing that, they give you different abilities in which you can kind of string together as you please and what fits your play style. I think of games like God of War, which is does a great job at this. There's really not a lot of combos. You really don't have much variation on the surface, but when you unlock so many different abilities, you really can string together some really interesting combos of your own. With that being said, we also know that the suits in this game are all going to have they're mostly going to come with their own suit powers. They're going to be a variation of offensive and defensive powers, apparently. We've only seen one. We've seen the Web Blossom. We can imagine what the Iron Spider-Man suit's going to do. It's going to have those mechanical legs. It's going to be interesting to see how they use them. And I do think having a robust skill tree with abilities and those different suit powers is going to help keep the game from feeling repetitive. Because honestly, you're going to have a lot of options when it comes to fighting. I think it is going to depend on the player to really utilize and to seek out those options, but they will be there to make sure that gameplay doesn't feel repetitive. Speaking of which, there's also going to be suit mods. Again, we haven't heard much about suit mods other than the fact that there's going to be 3 equipable spots essentially, but hopefully that again adds some diversity to gameplay. Finally, we have gadgets and finishers. So gadgets are honestly the thing I'm looking for most in this game. I think that giving Spider-Man gadgets is just like a match made in heaven. He's a smart kid. He's going to have gadgets. He's going to have tools that he's going to use to take down bad guys. And I think having different combinations of different fighting abilities, plus your suit powers, plus gadgets, different gadgets, that I honestly think I can stop the video here and say I think that's going to be enough to keep everything varied enough. But there's so much more, and I think that's a good thing. So the finishers. In the playable demo, they only selected 5 finishers because they didn't want to overwhelm players, which is smart. Most of the people at E3 only got to play it once. You have some people like Evan, that lucky guy, who got to play it 5 times. I'm so jealous of Evan. But, he had more time with it, but most normal players didn't have that much time, so they couldn't oversaturate them. But we know there's going to be a lot of finishers. So just looking at combat, there's going to be a good amount of combat choices, which is going to make this game not feel repetitive. But I think what's more important than that is going to be the actual enemies. So in all games, there's usually 3 types of enemies. You have your brawlers, you have your ranged attackers, and you have your heavies. So let's start with the brawlers. These are your hand-to-hand combat guys, your normal thugs usually, and we've seen that in this game. A lot of the fist people are just like normal thugs, but there's also the inner demons. Now, we know there's other factions that they haven't talked about, so hopefully they're pretty varied. But the inner demons look pretty interesting. They have the hex field, which is the negatively charged attacks. So some of the normal thugs are going to just be regular, hand-to-hand combat enemies. Some will have these negatively charged abilities, but there's also weapon bearers. So we saw in the Prison Break, some of the thugs were, the inmates were using the stun batons. Some of them were using shields, and then we've even seen some of the inner demons use a negatively our negative shields, some kind of hex shield, and we've also seen them use other weapons like scythes. So there thus far seems to be a fairly good amount of diversity with the regular normal brawlers. I'm hoping for additional enemy types, those who maybe use swords or knives, and those maybe might cause like additional bleed damage for Spider-Man. I'd like to see other kind of weapons as well, like maybe like whips, like negatively charged whips, some kind of like mid-range attackers that again add to the challenge of fighting. And honestly, I really hope that they do away with simple things and silly things like in the Amazing Spider-Man 2, where two enemies would attack you at the same time, and you would just basically hit the dodge attack button, and you would just hit them at the same time. That really didn't, diversify gameplay. It was the same thing as just dodging a regular person and hitting them. So I really hope Insomniac stays away from stuff like that. Alright, so the next enemy type again are the ranged enemies, and we know these are people basically who use like different weapons like guns. In this demo, we've seen snipers and we've seen like the regular ranged attackers who are using like assault rifles. But this game also has RPGs, so they have people who are firing RPGs. It looked like they actually fired maybe like a negatively charged RPG in one of the Inner Demon bases. So again, that's pretty interesting. We've seen people who are, throwing like flash bombs at Spider-Man, which disorients you. Either way, thus far, we do see a decent amount of ranged attackers. But again, I really want them to switch it up. I don't want just snipers and just regular shooters. I really want them to be creative with how they use their range fighters, or even maybe mix up what they do in their fight styles, so that the game never feels repetitive, that it always feels like the enemies are doing something different, tweaking their fighting styles to keep the game interesting. So next we have heavies. Again, most games have heavies, and these are pretty much the guys who you can't really just hit up front. You have to do something to either slow them down or tire them out. So in the demo that we saw last year in E3, we saw an Inner Demon heavy, in which Spider-Man pretty much just had to dodge him 3 times before he could hit him, or he had to hit him with something. These are typical, they're normal. I like that. However, again, I don't want heavies just to be typical. I don't want them all to have the same pattern. Heavies are usually slow, so I hope Insomniac does something like switches it up and makes heavies fast. I honestly want heavies that maybe, one hitter quitters. They hit you one time and they put you down. And that way you really have to think when you're fighting them, so that you don't just run in there button mashing. And again, like I said, I really want them to vary their patterns. I don't want it just to be 3 missed swings and then I can attack. Let's do something different, because otherwise you will have that repetitive feel. With that being said, moving on, I do want other enemy types. So I really want them to think outside of the box and not just do the regular brawlers, the range, and the heavies. It would be nice for them to add other enemy types that aren't spider bots. Please, dear Lord, I really hope that Insomniac does not use spider bots. I do want non-humans, because honestly, non-humans, or maybe humans in like tech suits. So I know this game's going to have a tech element, because obviously the Sinister Six, they all have their new unique suits. There's some tech behind that. I wouldn't mind tech opponents, kind of like in the Avengers 2, when they were taking down the Hydra base and everybody had pseudo Iron Man suits. That would be interesting, because again, you could have flyers. You can even have like stealth opponents who almost go invisible and they're really hard to see. But just different enemy types. Now, one thing I'm really excited for is the inclusion of mutants, possibly. So our good friend Evan pointed out that in the E3 demo, you can see different inmates who are literally red or blue. They actually, if you look closely at them, their skin is different as well. I don't think these are just enhanced individuals. I do really think these are mutants, because Insomniac is stressing that this is a Marvel universe. This is a Marvel world. Mutants, to me, in this kind of game are perfect, because honestly, they could be another faction. So obviously we know we have Fist, we have the Inner Demons. They said there's other factions. Hopefully mutants are their own thing, their own faction in some sort or in some sense, because really that would even play into Miles Morales' involvement in this story, because we know from his comics that the mutants were very heavily involved in his series and his run, especially on his universe, on his Earth, and it will really just play into his narrative in this game. But again, mutants would really do an amazing job in this game, because they can do things that normal people, even the Inner Demons, can't do. So there's going to be a lot of variation. There's possibilities for a lot of variation if we have mutants in this game. So again, the last thing I kind of want to focus on is just mixing all these different types up. So there's so many different types of enemies already that we've seen. We know that there's a lot more that we haven't seen. I really hope that they mix up the enemy types, and I really hope they mix up their patterns. I don't want them to feel, static, stale. I don't want them to do the same things. I want to be challenged. So like right now I'm playing God of War, and one thing that I really appreciate about that game is you might see an enemy that looks familiar, but they fight differently. There's different variations to their brawlers. There's different variations to their range attacks. There's different variations to their heavies. And because of that, you never feel OP even though you're the God of War. You always feel like I need to think about what I'm doing, going wisely, because if I button mash, I'm going to die. I really hope Insomniac does that, because that will keep this game from feeling repetitive. It'll keep it from feeling lackluster. If you are forced to think and you're forced to strategize, and there's a lot of enemy types and they all do slightly different things, this game is going to be amazing. There's no way it's going to feel repetitive. But again, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do me a favor, smash the like button, definitely leave a comment, and definitely subscribe to the channel. More Spider-Man content coming up. Man, thank you guys again for following me thus far. I just started this a week ago, and I really appreciate the comments and the feedback that I'm getting. I'm going to try to step it up a notch very soon. I'm going to try to get a little bit more professional. I'm trying to get my own little studio, try to get myself a microphone, and we're really going to do this thing. We're really going to ride this Spider-Man train all the way up into September. Honestly, I'm going to be off work. I'm going to be out of work for 3 months come, that September time. So I'm going to have a lot of time to play this game. It's going to be amazing. I'm probably going to do some live streaming, hopefully, but I'm definitely going to be uploading video, gameplay. Whole bunch of stuff coming up. Let me know what you guys want to see from me in the future. Thanks for watching. It's your boy CJ Drum. Peace out.